when they look at the numbers for the future, we're in a kind of a weird population collapse thing. Like Japan is fucked. They're having so few children in Japan that like in 3 generations, they could be in real trouble.
Ask you a question.
Yeah.
What the fuck's it got to do with me? I don't give a fuck about the Japs. You know, what the fuck is wrong with you, Joe? Yeah, but we don't have to worry about that.
I know. We don't have to worry about it.
This is fucking too much.
You're right.
This is the first podcast I'm done that I'm scared. You know what I'm saying? What the fuck is wrong with you?
You're right.
Enough with this shit.
You're right.
And politics, enough.
He's the most listened to podcaster in the world, with an audience bigger than many TV networks. But in 2025, Joe Rogan's show is facing a level of public scrutiny it hasn't seen in years. And not all of it is coming from strangers online. In recent months, Joe Rogan, one of the most listened to podcasters in the world, has found himself at the center of renewed public discussion. His show, The Joe Rogan Experience, still commands millions of weekly listeners and remains one of Spotify's most streamed programs globally. Since its early days in 2009, the podcast has grown from casual, long-form conversations recorded in a spare room to a cultural fixture that regularly hosts high-profile guests from across the political, entertainment, and scientific spectrum. Rogan's audience base has shown remarkable loyalty, with many listeners tuning in for his direct style, willingness to explore controversial topics, and mix of celebrity guests with subject matter experts. Episodes often span several hours, giving space for unfiltered conversation that traditional media formats rarely allow. This format has been a key factor in his rise to prominence, and a reason why his fan base sees him as an alternative to conventional news and talk shows. But alongside that ongoing reach, there has been a noticeable increase in scrutiny. Commentators from multiple sides of the political spectrum have questioned his handling of certain interviews, fact-checking practices, and the balance between personal opinion and guest perspectives. On social media, clips from his show are frequently shared out of context, sparking heated debates and sometimes overshadowing the full content of the conversation. Mainstream outlets have also revisited Rogan's recent episodes, highlighting moments that have stirred controversy. Some frame these moments as examples of healthy, open dialogue. Others view them as missed opportunities for deeper questioning or for addressing misleading claims in real time. For longtime fans, the program has evolved significantly over the years, shifting focus from the earlier blend of comedy, lifestyle, and fringe science toward more frequent political discussions and cultural commentary. Supporters say this reflects Rogan's genuine curiosity about current events. Critics see it as a move toward more polarizing territory. This dual reality, maintaining a massive audience while facing heightened public examination, has become one of the defining dynamics of Rogan's current career. And in recent weeks, some of the most pointed observations haven't come from anonymous online voices, but from fellow comedians and entertainers who have known him personally for years.
I know.
COVID is over. If you took the fucking needle, fuck you. If you didn't, now they just found out that fucking the flu shot don't work. I could have told you that 25
Not
fucking
only
years
does it
ago.
not work, it makes you 25% more likely
Come on,
to get the
man.
flu.
And I'm a GED type of fucking motherfucker. So knock it off. I hate all this shit. I'm scared. You know what I'm saying? The fuck?
I'm scared too.
Some of the most widely discussed reactions to Rogan's recent episodes have come from other comedians, many of whom either shared the stage with him in the past or appeared regularly on his show during its earlier years. These aren't anonymous commenters or distant media analysts, they're peers who have worked in the same clubs, toured the same circuits, and in some cases, built their own podcast audiences alongside him. Mark Maron, host of WTF with Mark Maron, has long been openly critical of Rogan's approach to certain topics. While Maron's comedic style and worldview have always differed from Rogan's, recent comments from him suggested that the gap has only widened. Speaking on another podcast earlier this year, Maron remarked that he doesn't think Rogan's impact on comedy has been great, framing it less as a personal attack and more as an observation about the cultural influence of Rogan's platform. Bill Burr, another veteran comic and former guest on the Joe Rogan Experience, also appeared to distance himself. While Burr has a history of poking fun at fellow comedians, his more recent remarks pointed to a sense of disapproval over Rogan's current tone and guest selection. Burr hasn't been on Rogan's show since 2021, and some observers interpret his comments as a quiet acknowledgement that their on-air dynamic has changed. Douglas Murray, a British author and commentator who has appeared on Rogan's podcast, also publicly addressed Rogan's style during interviews, noting that while Rogan remains an influential voice, His recent conversations have become more narrowly focused on a handful of recurring political and cultural themes. The criticisms have not all been hostile or one-sided. Some comedians have stressed that Rogan's show is still a major outlet for long-form conversation and that his willingness to platform a wide range of guests is rare in modern media. Others, however, believe that this openness comes with a responsibility to engage critically with every perspective, regardless of personal agreement. These remarks from peers carry a different weight than criticism from the general public. They come from people who understand the challenges of sustaining a career in comedy and broadcasting, making their observations less about taking sides and more about evaluating how Rogan's influence has shifted over time. And while commentary from comedians might seem like inside baseball to casual listeners, the discussions they spark often ripple far beyond the comedy world, especially when they intersect with broader debates about media responsibility and audience influence. While public criticism from fellow comedians has drawn attention, many of the most widely shared discussions about Joe Rogan in recent months have come directly from the content of his own show. Several episodes have sparked debates far beyond his regular audience, often because of how certain subjects were framed or the way particular exchanges unfolded in real time. One recurring theme involves the handling of politically or historically sensitive topics. In early 2025, an episode featuring guest James Talerico prompted discussion when Rogan questioned whether debating the numbers related to the Holocaust was equivalent to outright denial. While the conversation moved on quickly, clips from that exchange spread rapidly online, with some viewers criticizing Rogan for appearing to draw a distinction that others considered irrelevant or misleading. Supporters, meanwhile, argued that he was attempting to clarify definitions rather than defend the views in question. Another widely discussed moment occurred when Rogan hosted an episode that touched on climate change. Critics, including climate researchers, said certain points made during the conversation reflected common misconceptions or downplayed the severity of the issue. A study later identified his program among those contributing to what researchers called subtle climate disinformation, messaging that may not outright deny climate change, but can still cast doubt on established science. Rogan's defenders countered that the podcast is an open forum for guests' perspectives and that differing views should be heard without censorship. Political commentary has also been a flashpoint. In one episode, Rogan criticized U.S. Immigration and Customs Enforcement, ICE, for a series of raids targeting non-criminal immigrant workers. While some praised him for speaking out, others noted that the criticism came well after the raids had taken place and questioned why the issue wasn't raised sooner. The show has also drawn attention for moments when Rogan chose not to press certain high-profile guests on contentious issues. For example, when the director of the FBI appeared on the podcast during a period of renewed speculation about the Jeffrey Epstein case, Rogan did not directly challenge the official statements regarding the lack of certain investigative materials. To some, this reflected a respectful, non-confrontational interview style. To others, it was a missed opportunity to seek clarification on matters of public interest. Each of these moments has been amplified by social media, where short clips can take on a life of their own, often divorced from the broader context of the conversation. This has contributed to a growing perception among some audiences that Rogan's show operates in a space where editorial judgment and open conversation are in constant tension, and while these debates might once have stayed within his listener base, they are now increasingly part of wider media coverage, adding another layer to how his work is perceived. The conversations surrounding Joe Rogan in 2025 haven't been limited to the content of his episodes or the reactions from the comedy world. Several public moments outside the strictly comedic space have kept his name in headlines, often tied to broader political or cultural debates. One example came when Rogan commented on a series of Immigration and Customs Enforcement, ICE, raids that targeted undocumented workers without criminal records. His remarks, describing the raids as heavy-handed and unnecessary, gained traction online and were covered by national outlets. While supporters saw his comments as a principled stand, critics questioned the timing, noting that the operations had already been widely reported months earlier. Some also viewed the remarks as a departure from topics Rogan typically prioritizes on his show. Another widely covered instance involved Rogan's discussion of the Jeffrey Epstein case. During an episode featuring the FBI director, the subject of unreleased investigative files came up, particularly in light of social media claims that high-profile figures were named in them. Rogan expressed skepticism about the official explanation that nothing of relevance was being withheld. but chose not to press further during the conversation. Later, on a different episode, he reflected on that decision, explaining that he knew his lane and preferred not to push beyond it. For some, this was a reasonable acknowledgement of the limits of his platform. For others, it was seen as a missed opportunity to ask questions of public importance. Rogan has also weighed in on climate policy, social movements, and free speech debates, sometimes in ways that spark as much conversation as the guests themselves. His framing of political trends, such as describing Republicans as increasingly supportive of free speech and less supportive of foreign wars, has been cited by both fans and detractors, with some praising his independent stance and others disputing the accuracy of his characterizations. These moments have reinforced the perception that Rogan's influence now extends well beyond entertainment. Whether speaking about a scientific topic, a political controversy, or a cultural shift, his words often carry beyond the immediate audience of his podcast and into mainstream coverage. That expanded influence brings with it more attention, and inevitably, more public scrutiny, and as the spotlight on his comments grows, the competitive landscape of media and podcasting is changing around him. While Joe Rogan's podcast remains one of the most streamed in the world, the media environment around him is shifting. In early 2025, industry tracking showed a notable change on YouTube. Rogan's video uploads were briefly overtaken in views by Midas Touch, a progressive-leaning political podcast known for its outspoken criticism of former President Donald Trump and other conservative figures. The development was symbolic more than statistical. Rogan's primary platform is still Spotify, where he consistently dominates global charts and secures some of the highest engagement numbers in podcasting. However, the YouTube rankings drew attention because the platform has historically been a major secondary outlet for the Joe Rogan Experience. For years, Rogan's clips and full episodes regularly topped trending lists, often outperforming traditional news segments and other entertainment programs. Analysts offered different interpretations of the shift. Some saw it as a sign that political commentary, particularly with a clearly defined stance, can capture large audiences during high-profile news cycles. Others viewed it as a reminder that digital media success is fluid and that even long-established shows must adapt to changing viewer habits, algorithms, and competition from new formats. The rise of Midas Touch also reflects a broader trend. Audiences are increasingly drawn to shorter, highly shareable video segments that can be consumed quickly across multiple platforms. It's also worth noting that Rogan's style and release schedule differ significantly from many competitors. While Midas Touch publishes shorter, more frequent videos designed for rapid consumption, Rogan's content often comes in multi-hour episodes with a slower release pace. This format favors deep, unedited conversations but may not cater to viewers browsing for quick, digestible clips. As a result, direct comparisons of YouTube performance don't always tell the full story of audience reach or influence, especially when considering Rogan's dominance on audio-first platforms. Still, the fact that another program could surpass Rogan in a space he once dominated highlights how crowded and dynamic the online content landscape has become. New shows, whether political, comedic, or entertainment-based, can build large followings quickly, especially when their tone or messaging resonates with a particular cultural moment. And while Rogan's core fan base remains substantial, moments like this underline that even the most established figures in media operate in an environment where momentum can shift unexpectedly. For Rogan, who has enjoyed years of relative dominance, the appearance of high-profile competitors is less a threat to his overall platform and more an indicator of the shifting nature of media consumption. But when combined with other recent developments, including heightened criticism from peers and more public scrutiny of his episodes, it has fueled conversation about whether his position at the very top of the industry is as secure as it once seemed. And as the competition grows, the perception of Rogan himself is also evolving, particularly among younger audiences and newer cultural voices who are engaging with media in very different ways. Beyond competition in the podcasting space, Joe Rogan is also navigating a shift in how he is perceived by different segments of the public, particularly younger audiences. While his influence remains strong among longtime listeners and many in the comedy, mixed martial arts, and alternative media communities, there are signs that his cultural recognition is less universal than it once was. A lighthearted but telling example came earlier this year when singer and actress Renee Rapp, during a press interview, responded to a mention of Rogan with, "Who the F is Joe Rogan?" The comment was widely shared online, partly for its humor, but also because it reflected a generational divide. For some younger entertainers and their audiences, Rogan is not a central cultural reference point, even if his show dominates podcast rankings. This generational gap is reinforced by the changing ways people consume media. Many younger viewers gravitate towards short-form platforms like TikTok and Instagram Reels, where content is curated algorithmically and often stripped of its original context. In that environment, Rogan's long-form discussions, often running 2 to 3 hours, may not fit seamlessly into the habits of viewers who primarily watch in brief, mobile-friendly bursts. While Rogan's clips circulate on social media, they compete with thousands of other videos tailored for quick impact and high shareability. There is also a cultural shift in the kind of public figures younger audiences embrace. Many of the most prominent media personalities gaining traction today are niche creators who speak directly to specific communities rather than attempting to appeal to a broad, cross-ideological audience. Rogan's brand, by contrast, has long been built on reaching across various topics and perspectives, a strength for some listeners, but perhaps less aligned with the way Gen Z media culture tends to form tight-knit, identity-driven followings. That's not to say Rogan's younger audience is disappearing. He continues to draw in new listeners who discover his show through viral clips or guest appearances from figures they already follow. But the perception that he is everywhere in the cultural conversation is less absolute than it was during the height of his podcast's early growth. These subtle shifts in recognition and engagement don't appear to threaten his core listenership, but they may influence how his future growth plays out. In an increasingly segmented media landscape, even the most prominent names must adapt to remain visible across generational lines. And as these cultural dynamics evolve alongside competition and scrutiny, Rogan's next moves will likely determine whether his influence expands into new audiences or becomes more concentrated among his existing base. Joe Rogan's position in modern media is as complex as it is prominent. He remains one of the most successful podcasters in the world, with an audience that numbers in the tens of millions and a platform capable of influencing public conversation across topics ranging from mixed martial arts to global politics. Few personalities in any medium have managed to sustain such a large following for so long, particularly while maintaining a format that is largely unedited and driven by open-ended conversation. Yet, as the events of the past year illustrate, longevity at the top does not come without challenges. Rogan is facing sharper public criticism from peers within the comedy world, a more competitive digital landscape, and shifting patterns in how different generations engage with content. His willingness to host guests from across the ideological spectrum remains a defining characteristic of his show, but it is also the source of much of the debate surrounding his work, with opinions often splitting on whether his approach promotes free exchange or risks amplifying misleading narratives. Moments on his podcast that once passed largely unnoticed are now more likely to become viral talking points, amplified by social media and covered by mainstream outlets. These flashpoints, whether tied to political discussions, scientific debates, or high-profile guest appearances, have made Rogan's every word more visible and, in turn, more scrutinized. At the same time, his core audience continues to value the aspects of the show that first drew them in: the long-form conversations, the range of guests, and the unscripted conversational style. That loyalty has allowed Rogan to weather multiple waves of controversy in the past, and it may well carry him through the current cycle of heightened attention. Whether the developments of 2025 mark a significant turning point, or simply another chapter in an already eventful career, remains to be seen. The dynamics surrounding his show, from peer criticism to emerging competition and generational shifts, suggest that Rogan's place in the cultural conversation is not static. Like the broader media landscape itself, it is evolving, shaped by the intersection of audience expectations, technological change, and the unpredictable nature of public discourse. For now, Rogan remains at the forefront of podcasting, navigating an environment that is both more competitive and more scrutinized than at any point in his career. How he adapts, or chooses not to, will determine whether his influence grows, transforms, or holds steady in the years ahead.
If you enjoyed this video, make sure to leave a like and subscribe to Stars and Hypes so you don't miss what's coming next. I'd love to hear your thoughts on how things will continue. Drop them in the comments below. Thanks so much for watching, and until next time, take care and have a great day.